I got on my bike one morning. I dropped my car off to get the oil changed. I got on my bike to go get coffee in the meantime, and I never made it back. I crossed an intersection, and someone ran through the intersection and T-boned me in the middle of a 4-lane highway. So I went up on the hood and out in the middle of the street. It was one of those. It wasn't just a tap. I literally got run over. So, to be clear, and ended up, of course, in the trauma center from that with 5 broken bones and a spinal cord injury and a head injury. And after that, I had a surgery a year, spinal cord surgery, hip, shoulder, and knee. And then I received about 3 months in, I started getting the nightmares that came with it and the psychological fears that when you're faced with mortality, that's what comes, that really what PTSD, I think.
Today's guest is Julia Langley. Julia helps ambitious business leaders and performers overcome nervousness to become bold and confident speakers so they get the big payouts they deserve, land top-tier clients, and be recognized worldwide for their expertise. With over 15 years as a featured singer for Cirque du Soleil, she has performed on stage. With over 15 years as a featured singer on Cirque du Soleil, she has performed on stage in over 20 different countries and all 50 states. In 2019, she was hit by a Jeep while riding her bicycle, leaving her with injuries that changed her life forever. 4 surgeries later and a diagnosis of PTSD, Julia started from ground zero and with courage and resilience got her life back on track. She believes she was given a second chance and has dedicated herself to empower others to share their story and truly be the force they were born to be in this world. Welcome, Julia.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. I'm looking forward to this conversation, and I'm really excited to hear some of the things you've done and also some, unfortunately, about your accident.
Yes. You take away the good from it, of course. Yeah.
Yeah.
Challenges, but you learn to overcome. Yeah.
Absolutely. So what is one of the most courageous things that you have done after I've read that out?
I would say, well, there are a lot of courageous things I've done in my life. Let me start by saying that, all right? I've always been one to take risks and step out and do something different. I think when life gets a little humdrum, I get the urge to go and do something really big. So I've made a lot of decisions like that. Just I woke up one morning and was like, okay, I'm going to go to a different high school. And I just left and went to a different high school. I woke up one morning and said, okay, I'm going to move to a different state. And I just did it. So, those were pretty huge because they were pivotal moments in my life. The hardest challenge I ever faced, though, was coming back from my accident, because that's a very, very, when you go from the top of your game to rock bottom, you sort of lose hope, you change, and then you think you're only a shell of what your former self was. Will you ever have the strength that you had before? Will you ever be as good? Will you, it's, it's not just, it doesn't just affect you physically, it also affects you mentally. And I'd say coming back from that has been the biggest challenge of my life.
Wow. I can imagine. Absolutely. And I can totally understand, like you said, being a former part of yourself, a shell of it. And yeah, I can absolutely understand that.
Yeah, for sure.
So what got you into being a performer? And tell me about your time in Cirque du Soleil.
Well, I started singing actually when I was 2 years old. That was my debut. I started in church, and that's in the southern U.S. it's not only a place of worship, but also a social hub,
Yes.
for people here. So I come from a long line of singers and musicians. My
Oh, wow.
grandmother on my dad's side had 13 brothers and sisters. And part of their growing up was to go to what they called music school when they were
Mhm.
kids. And every single one of them played a musical instrument and sang. On my mom's side of the family, they had a gospel quartet. And there
Wow.
was, that from the time she was an early age. So really, music is just it's in my genes, it's in my family history. And so it was a natural thing for me to at least pick up music as a child. So I started again. I sang my first song in public when I was 2 years old. And I haven't really known a day in my life where music wasn't a very important part of that, or actually
Mm.
being in front of people on stage. That kind of kicked it off for me. I trained with my family and then got some formal training outside of my family as well, just going through the years. I actually went to college and got a business degree because,
Mhm.
I'm fairly pragmatic as far as wanting to make sure you can support yourself and take care of yourself,
Absolutely.
not be a starving musician. But the call kept coming back to me that I really had a gift in the arts and that I needed to be following that. So I started really getting involved in community theater. That was really my first step. And of course, I had been singing all
Mhm.
this time, but on a part time basis. I got involved in community theater in South Florida and met some people. And they had a unique situation in South Florida where you could produce a show. It's more of a concert, or if you will, a industrial style, cabaret style show. And you put that together, and then you have an agent. And I said, well, I can do that. And you know, the beauty of that is that you don't care about the challenges. It's like when I rode a horse for the first time. Yeah, you can fall off and they can kick you in the head, but you don't even think about that. You just go and do it. So I didn't even think about what could go wrong. I just said, okay, I can do that, and I went and did it. My friend that got me into that, she said, "You're the only one of my friends that's ever followed through." So
Wow.
that tells you right there that you
Mm.
can have a dream all day long, but until you follow through and you start to execute on that dream, it's just a dream. Well, I'm a firm believer in turning the dream into reality. Why dream if you're not going to do something about it? So that started really
Mm.
kicked off me in the professional realm, and I got out of corporate world, and
Mhm.
I was a fundraiser and put it all behind me, and I said, I'm going for this. So I started doing it. I started working for myself, and then next thing I know, I see an audition opportunity for Cirque, and I went. I said,
Wow.
I had a friend that took me to see a Cirque du Soleil show, and I was just blown away by it. And I said, here comes the next one. I want to do that. So I saw the audition for it and I went and did it.
Yeah, this is the thing. At least you've taken the action. It is all about only about taking the action.
Really and truly, absolutely.
Yeah.
And the thing about it, it's also about being open because, you can
Mm.
have this plan in your mind, but things don't always go exactly. And usually it's this or something better. Usually
Mhm.
something even better comes along. And so you have to be open to the twists and turns in the journey, which I was, because for me, the journey is fun. So I like not really knowing what's around the corner. And maybe that's a personality trait, but it served me well. And I
Yeah.
just step out and try. And am I perfect? No, no. If you look at my first videos that I sent out as a performer, I look back now and I just, it's like a face palm, really and truly. I'm like, why? How did anybody hire me off that video? But they did. They took a chance. I mean, I was singing. My first video to an agent was me singing the Star Spangled Banner, and we laughed about it later. Actually, after my professional career took off, we laughed about it. He's like, "Yeah, that's what you sent me." Why anyone would hire me to do a show based on that is beyond me. But that's when I think divine intervention comes in, and when you're in alignment, when you're doing what you're really put in this world to do, which I really felt like that
Mm.
was my journey, then it comes pretty easy. as long as you follow the path and you continue to do the work that you're supposed to do. And it did. Doors just opened and I started walking through them. Now, they weren't always easy. There were a lot of challenges on the other side of the doors, but you still walk through them.
Absolutely, and I couldn't agree more. Absolutely. Sometimes, you say intervention. They probably saw something that you never saw in yourself as well.
You're absolutely right. And I say this all the time, as a coach, and I hear it a lot about people. Well, I know how to breathe correctly using your voice, right? Yeah, but you're only doing it to 50% of your capacity. Well, I'm fearless. I know how to speak. Okay, but there are things that you don't see in yourself that other people see. And that's what you're giving off to the world.
Yeah.
And then you wonder why no one's buying your services or why you're not a successful performer, because you've got this vibe going on that's not really congruent to who you are. And that's what I do as a coach actually is help people become more congruent and really find what those unique parts of them are. I read a statistic yesterday, as a matter of fact, that 76% of the people in the world have no idea what their unique strengths are.
Wow.
76%.
That's a high number.
Yeah, where they're just kind of going through life. And we all have a gift. So it's and for me, performing, being on stage is really about taking those gifts and putting them out front. So really people see that specialness that you have in you. Now, we all have challenges too, but we have to learn how to manage the challenges and pull out the strengths. And that's really what I have focused as a coach, what I focus my business on.
Yeah, brilliant. I'll ask you some more about that later, but it's so true. They say we use 10% of us use about 2% of our brain. What do we do with the rest of it?
Well, it's just undeveloped, really. It's like your gifts; they're just undeveloped, and part of that is developing, and it is somewhat of a painful process. So people think in that development or whatever you need to heal or whatever, that it's an easy thing, that it's supposed to be. And I used the word easy a few minutes ago. I don't want to misconstrue the word easy. What I mean is that those doors open easily for you. Now, the process itself requires some serious resilience and stamina, but the opportunities come easy if it's aligned. So I want to clarify what I mean by easy.
Absolutely. So, Julia, tell me more about, you got hit while riding your bicycle. I mean, that left you with changes for your life forever. I mean, wow, I can't imagine. So please do tell me what happened.
I got on my bike one morning. I dropped my car off to get the oil changed. I got on my bike to go get coffee in the meantime. And I never made it back. I crossed an intersection and someone ran through the intersection and T-boned me in the middle of a 4-lane highway. So I went up on the hood and out in the middle of the street. It was one of those, it wasn't just a tap. I literally got run over. So to be clear, and ended up, of course, in the trauma center from that with 5 broken bones and a spinal cord injury and a head injury. And after that, I had a surgery a year, spinal cord surgery, hip, shoulder, and knee. And then I received about 3 months in, I started getting the nightmares that came with it and the psychological fears that when you're faced with mortality, that's what comes down, really what PTSD. I think there's a little bit of a misunderstanding of what it actually is. I hear the term thrown around a lot. I didn't know what it was. And I really didn't understand it at all until I was diagnosed with it and started to realize it's not just a regular anxiety that we have day to day. It's the actual facing down of mortality, that you almost died, you almost lost your life, and where do we go from here? So the psychological, the physical was very, very difficult because I was in the best shape of my life. So I go from that to not being able to open a Tupperware container or being able to walk. My friends had to do it for me. I couldn't drive because I had a head injury. But the mental part of it was maybe even more
Mm.
difficult to overcome. So, and then certain parts of that you never overcome. You learn how to manage it, and you learn how to live a healthy life. But I think I'm a better person now than I was then. So sometimes big things have to happen and to send you on to a new path.
Absolutely, for sure. Sometimes, we're swimming along in life and somebody up there turns around and said, let's shake it up a little. There's some lessons to be learned, or however you want to put it. And it throws us in a different direction completely. But,
Right.
You are here. I'm glad you've recovered. And like you said, PTSD,
Right.
it
Yeah.
is something, you can manage the best you possibly can.
Yeah. And one thing
Mm.
that was interesting
Mm.
is that through the journey with post-traumatic stress disorder, it's
Mhm.
I recognize it in others now and
Mhm.
can help. So I recently come across a couple of young aspiring artists that have had some recent trauma in their life, and I recognized it immediately.
Mhm.
So as that person that went through it myself, I was able to speak to them in a way that, like, I get it. I
Mhm.
understand. I
Mhm.
found that when I was learning how to manage it, one of the best ways was to talk to somebody else that had been through it. I could you can
Mhm.
go to therapy all day long, but the best
Mhm.
therapy for me was when someone looked at me and said, I know, I know what's happening to you right now. I know.
Yes.
And so, because at first you think you're going crazy, and
Mhm.
yeah, so it's been an interesting journey, but I didn't go back to what I was. I actually
Yeah.
was reborn after that.
Mhm.
And I think that that's key when you're faced down with a challenge such as this. What are you going to do with it? What are you going to do with it afterwards?
Mhm.
And I was definitely given a second chance. I'm not paralyzed. I came very, very close because I had a spinal cord injury that was
Yes.
a very scary spinal cord injury.
Mhm.
But I'm not paralyzed, and I'm still here, and I've got work to do, and I'm going to do it.
Absolutely. How important is it for everyone to build resilience to keep their life on track? I know people say, that I think sometimes that word's just thrown around and branded a lot, but
It
tell
is.
me more about that because I think you're the best person after what you've been through to give me a
Well,
real insight into that.
Well, first, let me say this. I think resilience is so important that I have put
Mhm.
it in as one of the 5 components of my core program for confidence and speakers, right? It's in there for any performer. You have to
Mhm.
have it. If you crumble at the slightest, you're not going to survive the performance world because
Mhm.
there's a certain toughness that is required physically and mentally. And I say this, and then I'll just give you a taste of it, on the road, and you're performing, and
Mhm.
all of the things when you're reviewed. Let's say that. Let's say you're reviewed in a newspaper and someone writes something nasty about you. Are you going to crumble and cry? Or are you going
Oh.
to just close the newspaper and pick yourself up? Because there's trolls everywhere. And there are a
Mhm.
lot of armchair quarterbacks that feel good about doing that. And
Mhm.
that's just a small example of, and that's something there are even bigger things that you have to deal with. But that alone, or friends that just want to tear you down because all of a sudden you're doing something different and
Yes.
something bigger and something good. So every time you level up, there are people that don't want to see you level up. So there's
Absolutely.
resilience is required there. There's going to
Mhm.
be times where you step out on the stage and you don't feel like you gave your best performance or your best speech, your best interview, whatever. Are you going to let it beat you? Yeah. No, you can't. It's
Yeah.
not optional. So this is what resilience is. Resilience isn't just getting hit by a Jeep and learning to get your life back. Resilience happens every
Mm.
single day, and it's persevering, because the really good things in life, you're going to be faced with challenges. And
Absolutely. Mm.
every level that you get to in your life, you're going to have a new challenge. You're going to have something new that you have to overcome, something new. You never ever get out of the tests of the challenges.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what are you going to do with that? Are you gonna it's up to you. You
Yeah.
fall down on the stage, or you just gonna run off and cry? No, and I've fallen down on the stage before. I mean, I'm just throwing
Mm.
out instance
Mhm,
after
mhm.
instance where resilience is required and things that you don't even think about.
Mm.
I did a show last week with a group of young adults. I write the show. And we had a part in there where we used silly string in our show. I know it sounds
Oh,
crazy. You have to watch the show, but it was crazy. But what we did not anticipate was that once it landed on the stage was wet.
oh,
So we had a couple of performers that went down in a dance. They just went down. Right. Now the second show we did, we we knew better. But the first show, and it's embarrassing, right? But if you handle it correctly, no one remembers it.
absolutely,
And
absolutely.
and so this is what I want to say about
Mm,
resilience. It can be as serious as getting hit by a Jeep and getting your life back.
mm.
Or it can be something as simple as like, getting your dress caught up under something on stage, which I did. I did one time, and someone had to crawl up under something and get me unhooked, like
Yeah.
things like that. But
Mm,
all of that is what resilience is. It's not letting challenges beat you. And
absolutely.
and there's a mindset. So again, and
Mm,
I know we're going to talk about this, but as part of it is a core pillar of one of my program that I
mhm,
coach people on is
mm.
perseverance and resilience.
Definitely. So, what is the relationship between being a great presenter, performer, and courage, would you say, Julia?
Well, this is another big one, and it all kind of plays into resilience a little bit. But courage,
Hmm.
and it's all on it depends. Every level, there's a different
Hmm.
level of courage that you
Hmm.
have to have. So I'm going to give you an example of a story. I worked with a client one time who every single time it came time for her to step out on the stage, I couldn't find her. I'd go search for her, and she'd be in the bathroom in the stall crying, paralyzing
Hmm.
fear. Well, fast forward. Now she stands in front of 2,000 people and advocates for the American Heart Association. Like she decided that
Mm.
she wanted it more than her fear was. Her desire was stronger than her fear. And that's what courage is. And the thing is that one of the things I try to really show people is that courage is not necessarily jumping off a cliff, although it can
Hmm.
be. Sometimes courage is like sticking your toe in the water, just
Yeah.
sticking the toe in. All right. Sometimes that requires a massive amount of courage. I had to have a lot of courage when I walked across the street after
Mm.
my accident, just walking across the street. So courage
Absolutely.
is defined in a lot of different ways, but it's really facing down those challenges. So and saying that I want this is more important to me than being scared and being fearful.
Mm.
That's
Absolutely.
bravery. That's courage.
Yeah, for sure, definitely. So, do you have any stories to share? Because you've worked with a lot of people, obviously, without giving their identity away,
Of
you must
course.
have come up with a lot of things. Can you share anything?
I can, and every person that I work with is unique. And
Mhm,
that is what part of what I enjoy about it is the
mhm,
challenge of finding those unique parts of that individual that
mhm,
and taking the fears that they have and really transforming that into an excitement to be on stage. And I've worked with, it's really funny. Let me say this too. About 50% of my clientele is men. So I work with
Ooh.
women and men alike that really, really want that boldness. And for whatever
Mhm,
reason in their life have lost it. For example, I had one gentleman he was in a really nasty divorce. And
mhm.
as a result, just lost his confidence.
Okay.
And yeah, and so it can be something like that. You don't really, sometimes it seems like something that's very small to someone else has a
Mhm.
major effect on another individual.
Absolutely.
And yeah, and so one person I worked with in particular, I feel like they couldn't find their tribe. They just couldn't find where they fit.
Mm,
And that in itself is demoralizing because
mm,
you feel like, why am I here? And so it gets into the life coaching realm because a lot of what I do is about confidence. So we started working on their voice. and how to use their voice in a more powerful way. And I started seeing a transformation in this individual in a lot of different ways. And I laugh now because we joke, I've created a monster. Because now this person that I'm speaking of has taken the world by storm, all right? Has involved in musical theater, actually has started singing because they didn't even consider themselves a singer. This was a speaker. This person joined a band. They started finding people that they felt like they belonged with. They met friends. And now there's a confidence level that that person will take with them throughout the rest of their life. So this was transformational. This wasn't just about learning to use your voice. It wasn't just about standing up on stage. Ultimately, the core of what I do is to transform people's lives in a way where they are braver, bolder, and stronger in everything they do. That's what the stage can give you. That's what my program does. And it's really remarkable and so fulfilling to me when I see people step into that and start to realize their worth in the world. That is why I do what I do.
Absolutely beautiful. Beautiful. So what do you think holds people back the most with their communication with others then?
Well, the number one thing is fear. They're afraid. Now, fear can manifest itself in a lot of different ways, and people aren't always afraid of the same thing. You can have the person that's afraid of making a mistake. There's a lot of that. I'm afraid I'll mess up. There's the person who is afraid of being judged. There's a person that's afraid of ridicule, that they're going to be ostracized. And these are valid fears because it happens, you know. So it's learning really in your mind how to navigate that and where you need to be, that confidence level that you need to have in your head to face that when it comes towards you, because it will come towards you. I mean, I've faced all of these things in my life. An example for me is, and I see this in other people, and this is a really big thing of what I've been working with people on, is that we have a tendency to tuck ourselves in, whether it be for family or because we've been told we're too much by family or by friends. Calm yourself down, you know, you're mean. Slow your roll. So what do? You silence yourself. All right. Now that's fine. But what happens is that you start to lose that part of you. And directness is fine as long as it comes from a place of love. And, you can be direct and loving. All right. You can disagree and be loving, but we have this mindset that we just really have to tuck in who we are. So what that does, and you were talking about these words that have been branded, authenticity is another word that's thrown around right and left. But I'm going to offer right here another look into authenticity. When we tuck ourselves in like that, when we're put down so much, we tuck ourselves in, we start saying things and doing things that's really not congruent with who we are. That is not authenticity. And so people really don't have an understanding of what authenticity is. It's learning how to be who you are, owning it unapologetically, and yet coming from a place of service at the same time. And that is a skill, and that takes work, internal work. But that in a nutshell, is a lot of what I do in confidence building.
Absolutely love that. You've put it brilliantly there. Absolutely.
And I've experienced it. Here's the thing. I know it because I've experienced it myself. I tucked my own self in until I started realizing, whoa, I'm not sharing who I really am. And I'm not sharing my gifts with the world, really and truly, not in the way that it needed to be shared. And that's what communication is learning how to share in a way that is productive and that moves the needle forward.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. And absolutely love that. So, Julia, I know we've spoken about the great projects you're doing and the amazing things you do. I know you've touched on that, but tell me about your 6-week program that you're just going to launch.
Yes, I have a 6-week program from lackluster to superstar. And actually, this is 6 weeks to becoming more credible, authoritative, and increasing your income by learning how to use your voice in a bold and confident way. And the thing that makes this program stand out. This is actually my signature group program that I have. And a thing that makes this program stand out is that it is not just a learning program where you sit there and you get the lecture, but it's actually also includes a hot seat where you actually get to write, execute, and in a very safe environment, learn what you're doing right, what you're not doing so good, go back in and really work on it, refine it, and make it better. So it's a program that not only talks about what you need to do, but helps you execute and start to embody the process of using your voice in a confident, bold way.
Wow, that's brilliant. And I'll put all the links in your show notes so everybody can take a look at that.
Thank
That's
you.
brilliant.
Yes. Just click on the link. You can sign up for the program that will be starting soon. And of course, I do offer one-to-one if someone's looking for a deeper dive into it, that program that is specifically catered to finding individual needs. If you have some very specific things you need to work on, then, that might be for you as well. So these are the things that I'm doing.
That's brilliant. So all that you've been through so far, what is the most important lesson you've learned over your life so far?
There's so many lessons. Picking one sometimes is very hard. I do think the biggest lesson that I learned is what I'm teaching, and it's what I was just talking about. Understanding authenticity and really being true to who you are in a way of service and love.
Love that.
And
Love that.
and not being afraid. I believe that when you coach people on certain things, as I do, that I think you are tested in the exact same way. And it's what you do with that test. Do you realize it's a test, or do you just crumble? And I've been in those situations where I'm like, why is this happening to me? Until I turn around and look and go, I'm coaching people on this very thing. How can I coach someone else unless I've been through it myself and I understand it?
And absolutely.
And that's it. That's was the biggest eye opener for me.
Yeah, and that's where it comes into walking your talk.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So what resources do you recommend, tools, daily tips to anyone that wants to start overcoming their shyness?
Well, shyness, nervousness, it's all kind of rolled into fear, really and truly, because one person might have anxiety, the next person might just be an introvert. So, everybody's different, and everyone's blocks are going to be a little bit different. So when we're talking about fear, one of the things that, and I have a lot of tips that I can throw out when we're talking about nervousness or fear. But one of the things that I think is so valuable is visualization. And I teach this. This is just one component of some of the things that I teach. But visualization is so important because it's very easy for us to visualize the worst outcome. We always think, if you have to have a difficult conversation with someone, why do you think it's difficult? Because you're afraid it's not going to go so well, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't think it would be difficult. So when you're thinking about speaking in front of people, even if even if you're just getting up and giving a speech or in a team, in a corporation, whatever, you get nervous because you feel like it's not going to go so well or something bad's going to happen. That's that fight or flight instinct within us stepping in to say, this is scary. All right. Yeah. But we can reframe that in our mind. And I will say this, that men and women's reaction to it is similar, even though we're very differently wired up. All right. Men and women's iOS is very, very different, right? But a reaction to stressful triggers is similar. But the key is to reframe. And visualization is one way that you can reframe. And it's, how do you want it to end? All right. What do you want? So it's like writing a book. Start with the end. Start with the end and work backwards, right? So what do you want out of this presentation? Or what do you want out of this conversation? Let's just bring it down to communication with one-on-one. What do you want out of the conversation? And when you visualize what you want and it ending on a positive note, then you can work backwards from there. And it's not only just about thinking positive thoughts, it actually changes the way you communicate when you have that end in mind. So the words you start to use are different. And some of this is even unconscious. Like you don't even recognize you do it. But when you start to go into it with a positive attitude instead of negative, it changes how we react.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So it's an extremely powerful tool to use.
That's brilliant. And thank you for sharing that. Where can the listeners find you online, your book? What's your website, Julia?
My website is julialangley.com, and you can go there, and that's where you can find my 6-week program as well. I do have a book on Amazon called Call to Speak, Lead, and Impact. It's a collaborative project that I did that was a #1 bestseller in speaking. And so I do have an author page on Amazon if anyone's interested in grabbing that. It goes a little bit more in detail as to some of the work that I've done in my journey as well. And there's a lot of other entrepreneurs that have some valuable insights in that book as well. But definitely check out my website, julialangley.com. I'm also on pretty much all social, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram as Julia Langley. And you can see in my name, Cirque Singer Jules is my handle on Instagram. So please look me up and send me a direct message. You know, I'm always I'm always open to meeting new people and to talk with you. And if you want a deeper dive into it, you can set up a call with me. That's fine. I would love to have a chance to talk to you about your own personal needs and your own fears, or what you might be facing in communication or using your voice and confidence.
Thank you. That's brilliant. Thank you for sharing your insightful wisdom and knowledge with us today. And by doing so, I know you have helped so many others to make a difference. I really like to acknowledge you for that, Julia Langley.
Thank you very much. It's been my pleasure.
And we are all about Create the Courage to Be Fearless podcast here. What is your definition of courage?
My definition of courage is facing the journey with excitement, with wonder, and taking the steps one step at a time. That is courage. Just keep moving forward.